A millionaire took a homeless woman to his ex-fiancee's wedding, and what she did left everyone speechless. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, enjoy the story. William Lancaster, a proud and wealthy businessman, held a wedding invitation in his hand. It was from Olivia, his ex-fiancée, the same woman who had walked out of his life and into someone else's arms without a second thought. And now she had the nerve to invite him to her wedding? It felt like a slap in the face, like she was flaunting her happiness right in front of him. "Is this a joke?" he muttered bitterly, tossing the envelope onto his desk. His best friend, Dahman Carter, picked it up and gave a low whistle. "That's cold. You thinking of going?" William let out a dry, humorless laugh. "And show up alone? Like I've been moping around ever since she left me? Not a chance." "Then don't go alone. Take someone. Show her you've moved on, that your life's better than ever." Dahman's words lit a spark. He was right. Just going wasn't enough. If William was going to show up, he had to make an impression. He needed someone who'd leave Olivia wondering, second-guessing, maybe even regretting. Later that day, as William stepped out of his office, still turning the idea over in his mind, something, or rather someone, caught his eye. Outside a busy restaurant, sitting on the cold sidewalk, was a young woman. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her hair was wild, her face smudged with city dust. But she had a striking beauty beneath it all. There was no sadness in her eyes, just a fierce, quiet strength. Defiance. Without fully understanding why, William walked over to her. Hands in his pockets, he looked down. "Need money?" he asked casually. The woman looked up at him, not with gratitude, but with sharp suspicion. Her eyes scanned him as if she were trying to decide whether he was worth her time. Then a smirk tugged at her lips. "What is this? A social experiment? Depending on what I say, you either flip me a coin or keep walking?" William blinked. No one ever spoke to him like that. It threw him off, but he didn't show it. "I want you to come to an event with me. I'll pay you, enough to change your life." She let out a short laugh, shaking her head as if he'd just offered her a role in a bad play. "Change my life? Do you always talk like you're in a movie? Or just when you're pretending to be someone's savior?" There was a bite in her voice that made him grit his teeth. Still, he kept his cool. "All you have to do is dress up, smile, and come with me for one night." She tilted her head, intrigued. "Oh, I get it now. You want me to be your little showpiece, your arm candy for the night." He narrowed his eyes. She was pushing his buttons on purpose. "If you're not interested, I'll find someone else." She laughed again, this time louder, bolder. "Is this a joke? Do you see a line of options out here on this sidewalk? Because I sure don't." William's jaw clenched. Somehow she had completely flipped the power dynamic. Then, without warning, she stood up, brushed off her dress, and stepped in close. Almost too close. "I'll do it," she said, like she was granting him a favor. "But only because I'm curious." He raised a brow. "Curious about what?" A slow, unreadable smile spread across her face. "To see how far a man like you is willing to go." For a second, William just stared at her. Who was this woman? Later, as they sat in his luxury car, William kept glancing at her. She hadn't asked where they were going. She hadn't asked why. She didn't even seem impressed by the leather seats or the view of the city skyline whizzing by. She just watched the world outside, calm and unreadable. No fear, no nerves, no small talk. Just silence, and a quiet confidence that made William wonder if he was the one being taken for a ride. "You're not even going to ask where we're going?" William finally asked, breaking the silence between them. She turned her head, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Someplace expensive, I assume?" William raised an eyebrow. "And you're not curious?" "Should I be?" she replied, tilting her head slightly. "You picked me up off the street and offered me cash to be your date. That's already weird enough, but I doubt you're taking me somewhere dark and shady, unless you're secretly running a human trafficking ring or something." William burst out laughing. "Nothing that dramatic. Just a social event." "A wedding," she said. He looked at her, startled. "How do you know?" "You have that look," she said with a sly grin. "Like a man with something to prove. A man planning to get revenge." His jaw tightened. She was reading him too well, and he didn't like it. "And if I am, he asked cautiously. She shrugged, unfazed. Doesn't matter to me, as long as the payment's real. William smiled despite himself. He couldn't decide if her confidence was refreshing or dangerous. Either way, she wasn't like anyone he'd met before, and that made him want to know more. A few minutes later, the car rolled to a stop outside a sleek, modern building. Isabella stepped out without asking a single question, following William into what was clearly a luxury beauty salon. The air smelled like roses, oils, and wealth. Stylists rushed forward the second they recognized William. "I want a full transformation," he said, his tone sharp. "Hair, makeup, wardrobe, the works." The staff nodded professionally, instantly directing Isabella to a plush styling chair. "If you want to back out," she said, settling in, "now's your chance." "Back out?" "About me," she said, giving him a knowing look. "I figured you'd want someone more impressionable." William crossed his arms. "Are you not impressed?" "Not by this," she replied calmly, closing her eyes as the stylist began rinsing her hair. "I've seen this world before." That made him pause. But before he could question her, one of the stylists guided him toward the waiting lounge. "Mr. Lancaster, we'll need some time," the stylist said politely. He glanced at Isabella once more before stepping away, curiosity growing like a flame in his chest. Hours ticked by slowly. William didn't usually wait for anything, but this time, he found himself restless. When a stylist finally called him back, he stood quickly and walked into the salon, his eyes scanning for her. And when he saw her, he froze. The woman in front of him barely resembled the one he had approached on the sidewalk. Her hair now shimmered in perfect waves. Her skin looked flawless, glowing under the soft lighting. Her eyes, once shadowed with exhaustion, now sparkled, emphasized by elegant makeup. The dress hugged her body with sharp precision, and her heels gave her the kind of poise that turned heads. But what struck him the most wasn't the transformation. It was her attitude. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even smiling. She looked at herself in the mirror as if she had seen this version of herself before, as if it was simply a return to form. "What is it?" she asked, catching his stare through the mirror. "You don't look surprised," he said quietly. Isabella smiled, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Because I'm not." William crossed his arms, his voice low. "Who are you?" She grabbed the sleek purse one of the stylists handed her and stepped toward him confidently. Someone who knows a good opportunity when she sees one. The car glided down the road, city lights painting golden lines across the windshield. William, for the first time all day, felt anticipation building. The wedding he had dreaded now felt like a stage, and Isabella somehow was turning into the star of the show. Beside him, she remained calm. Too calm. No nerves, no questions. Just that same unreadable, almost serene focus. "You're very quiet," he said, stealing a glance at her. "I'm just enjoying the silence," she replied with a soft, almost amused smile. He frowned. "Most people in your shoes would be a little overwhelmed." She let out a light laugh. "Maybe I'm not like most people." William realized then that pushing for answers wouldn't get him far. She was holding her cards close and playing this game better than he expected. The car finally pulled up in front of a grand banquet hall, glowing under hundreds of soft lights. Outside, the elite were already arriving, stepping out of limos and sports cars, wrapped in silk and dripping in diamonds. Paparazzi lights flashed like fireworks, catching every detail. William stepped out first, straightening his jacket. His movements were calm, practiced. Then he reached back and offered his hand. Isabella took it without a pause, and when she stepped out of the car, the crowd turned to look. The impact was immediate and impossible to ignore. Every head turned in her direction. Women leaned in, whispering to one another, trying to guess who the striking woman on William Lancaster's arm could possibly be. The men weren't subtle either. Curious eyes followed her every step. But Isabella didn't flinch. With perfect poise, she lifted her chin and offered a subtle, confident smile, as if being the center of attention was something she'd grown used to long ago. William led her steadily down the red carpet, his hand lightly guiding her toward the grand entrance of the hall. Isabella's expression remained serene, betraying no hint of surprise at the lavish surroundings. "Follow my lead," William murmured under his breath. "Be polite, smile, and try not to draw too much attention." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "Did you bring me here to make your ex jealous or to be invisible?" He pressed his lips together, not offering a reply. "That's what I thought," Isabella said with a playful smile, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the tension. The towering double doors swung open, revealing the grand ballroom beyond. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a golden glow, casting soft light over the sea of elegantly dressed elites. It wasn't long before Olivia appeared in William's line of sight, his former fiancée looking radiant in a flawless white gown, her smile curated to charm every person in the room. Beside her stood Charles Montrose, her perfect match on paper, rich, conservative, and entirely unremarkable. As their eyes met, Olivia's polished smile flickered. Surprise briefly crossed her face at the sight of William, but then her gaze landed on Isabella and everything shifted. Her smile faltered just slightly, eyes narrowing as she tried to place this stunning woman at William's side. Without hesitation, William led Isabella directly toward them. "Olivia," he greeted coolly, his tone polite but noticeably distant. She blinked a few times before forcing a smile back. "William, what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here." "Of course I came." His eyes flicked to Isabella. "And I brought company." Olivia's gaze swept over Isabella again, this time slower. "We haven't met. You are—" Before William could answer, Isabella stepped forward gracefully, extending her hand with a natural elegance. "Isabella, a pleasure to meet you." Her voice was calm and composed, her smile warm but unreadable, her posture flawless. There wasn't the slightest hint of insecurity. Olivia hesitated, then took her hand briefly, clearly unsettled. "You look familiar." "Do I?" Isabella tilted her head with a light smile, her tone teasing. Olivia held her smile, but William caught the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. She was rattled, exactly as he'd hoped. Charles, trying to break the ice, cleared his throat and lifted his champagne glass. "Shall we toast?" William nodded in agreement, but before he could respond, Isabella's voice chimed in with a calm, deliberate statement that caught everyone off guard. "I hope you'll be very happy. Marriage is a serious commitment. I was once engaged myself." The words hung in the air like a dropped crystal. William froze mid-motion. Olivia and Charles exchanged a glance. "Really?" Olivia asked, her tone light but forced. Isabella took a sip of champagne and nodded. "Yes, but it didn't work out. My fiancé's family didn't think I was the right fit." William felt a jolt in his chest. That wasn't just a story, she was sending a message, and Olivia got it loud and clear. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, her perfect mask beginning to slip. "That's quite a coincidence," Olivia said, her voice just a touch sharper. "I think so too," Isabella replied smoothly, her smile never wavering. A heavy silence settled over the group, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Isabella turned to William, her fingers brushing his arm lightly. "Would you like to dance?" He blinked, surprised. "Dance?" "Yes," she said, eyes glinting. "Or would you rather stay here and watch your ex try to figure out how she knows me?" A low chuckle escaped William. He was enjoying this more than he expected. "Let's dance." They turned and left Olivia behind, her expression visibly shaken. As the music filled the ballroom and the two glided effortlessly across the polished floor, William kept his eyes locked on Isabella. "You did that on purpose," he murmured, guiding her through the steps with smooth precision. She smiled at him, eyes gleaming. "Didn't I tell you? I've been in this world before." William studied her, trying to unravel the layers she kept so carefully hidden. Isabella moved with such grace, such confidence, it was hard to believe she'd once been living on the street. "You keep surprising me," he said quietly. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" she asked, raising a brow. "I haven't decided yet." She laughed softly, the sound light and warm, her eyes dancing with mischief. "I think by now you've realized," Isabella said, her voice smooth, "that I'm not exactly what I appear to be." William gave her a measured look. "I've realized you know far more about this world than you should." She tilted her head slightly, a mysterious smile tugging at her lips. "Let's just say, I've been surrounded by people like this before." Before William could press further, a group of businessmen approached, their glasses of champagne gleaming under the chandelier light. Their polished suits and practiced smiles made it clear. They were men of power and wealth, figures William was more than familiar with. "Lancaster," one of them greeted warmly, shaking William's hand. "You finally decided to grace us with your presence at a social gathering." William returned the handshake with equal firmness. "I thought this was a fitting occasion to celebrate the happy couple." But almost immediately their attention drifted to Isabella. They eyed her with curiosity, clearly intrigued. "And who's your lovely companion?" one of them asked with a raised brow. Before William could respond, Isabella stepped forward with effortless elegance and extended her hand. "Isabella, a pleasure to meet you." Her confidence was undeniable, natural, unshaken, and completely convincing. Not a single man questioned her presence. "Isabella," one of them repeated, squinting slightly as if trying to recall. "Your face seems familiar." She kept her smile composed, her tone light. "Perhaps we crossed paths at another event. These circles tend to overlap." The man nodded slowly, satisfied for now. William watched her carefully. Isabella wasn't just fitting in. She was thriving. "And what do you do, Isabella?" another man asked, clearly intrigued by her composure. With practiced ease, she took a champagne flute from a passing waiter, twirling the golden liquid gently. "I enjoy keeping an eye on financial markets. The surge in tech investments lately has been fascinating, especially the rise of startups focused on artificial intelligence." A pause followed. William almost laughed at the stunned looks on their faces. They hadn't expected such an articulate answer. "That's a pretty specific area," one of them said, eyebrows lifted. Isabella took a sip of her drink, her tone calm but layered with meaning. "I just follow trends. In the end, everything comes down to who gets the inside information first, doesn't it?" The men chuckled, visibly impressed. The atmosphere relaxed, their skepticism melting away. Isabella had won them over in a matter of seconds. William, however, felt a tightening knot in his chest. She wasn't just making an impression, she was commanding the room. Before he could step in, another figure joined them. A tall, silver-haired man with a presence that demanded attention. Damian Blackwood, one of the country's most powerful investors, known for his ruthless insight and uncanny ability to read people. Isabella, right? Damian said, eyes narrowing as he studied her. You seem very comfortable here. She met his gaze with a warm smile. Maybe because I am. He let out a low, approving laugh. I like that. And what's your relationship with Lancaster? Isabella glanced at William with amusement before replying, just an interesting partnership. William clenched his jaw. She was enjoying this too much. Indeed, he interjected, stepping in and taking the glass from her hand, offering it to a nearby waiter. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to borrow my companion for a moment. Without waiting for a response, he gently grabbed her wrist and led her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. What exactly are you doing? He hissed, his voice low and tense. Isabella just smiled, calm as ever. Having a little fun. Isn't that what you wanted? To make your ex squirm? You're drawing too much attention. She tilted her head. Wasn't that the plan? His eyes narrowed. You play this game very well, Isabella. And you don't like it when you're not the one in control, do you? William gave a dry laugh, equal parts frustrated and impressed. You're not just a simple beggar. She crossed her arms, her gaze steady. Took you long enough to figure that out. Before he could answer, Olivia appeared beside them, her expression carefully composed. I hope you're enjoying the party, she said, her voice polite, but her eyes flicking toward Isabella with obvious scrutiny. Very much, Isabella replied smoothly, beating William to the response. Olivia's smile didn't reach her eyes. You know, I feel like we've met before. Maybe, Isabella said with a casual shrug. High society can be a small world. William noticed the subtle way Olivia's lips pressed together. And how do you know William? She asked, clearly fishing. Isabella smiled with playful mystery. I think it's more fun if that stays a secret. Olivia let out a forced laugh, but there was steel behind it. Of course, mystery always adds flavor to a story. She turned to William. Can we talk for a moment? He nodded, casting a final glance back at Isabella. She met his gaze with a knowing smile, completely unfazed. He followed Olivia through the crowd to a private balcony. The evening air was crisp, the city lights stretching endlessly before them. But the fire in Olivia's eyes burned brighter than anything outside. Who is she? Olivia demanded, arms folded tightly across her designer gown. William kept his tone even. Her name's Isabella. She's my guest. Don't lie to me, Olivia snapped. I know the type of women you usually bring to these events, and she's nothing like them. His jaw tensed. What exactly are you trying to say? I'm saying she doesn't belong here, Olivia said, stepping closer. Where did you find her, William? He hesitated, only for a second, but it was enough. Oh my God, she whispered, realization dawning. You found her on the street, didn't you? William didn't respond, but his silence was confirmation enough. This is insane, Olivia said, half laughing in disbelief. You brought a homeless woman here just to provoke me? I brought a smart, confident woman who belongs here more than most people in that ballroom. He shot back. She knew too much, Olivia said coldly. Too much for someone who supposedly lived on the street. She doesn't belong in this world. Her voice trailed off as she gave him a hard look. Or does she? William's jaw tightened. Don't start playing games with me. Olivia, you don't have that right anymore, William said, his voice cool. She raised a brow. Maybe not. But I do have the right to know who I'm dealing with. Her posture shifted, sharpened, as if a decision had been made. If I were you, William, I'd be careful. That woman didn't just appear in your life by accident. And with that, she spun on her heel and vanished into the ballroom crowd, leaving him alone, standing in the quiet storm of his thoughts. Her words echoed in his mind, wrapping around his unease like a tightening noose. Inside, Isabella could feel the eyes following her. Every step she took through the lavish ballroom seemed to draw attention. Of course it did. From the moment she arrived, the room had been trying to solve the puzzle that was her. But she didn't falter. She walked with the ease of someone born into this world, even if she wasn't. Then Olivia stepped in front of her, blocking her path like a well-dressed wall. You dance well, she said smoothly. Isabella smiled, her voice light. Thank you, so do you. Olivia tilted her head, studying her face like it was a painting she couldn't quite interpret. You speak well too. You know how to carry yourself at an event like this. I appreciate the compliment, Isabella said, keeping her tone calm and even. Olivia gave a short, cold laugh. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. Isabella met her stare without blinking. You think you know me? I don't think, Olivia replied a bit too quickly. I know. Then tell me, Olivia, Isabella said, voice cool and steady. Who do you think I am? Olivia took her time. She didn't answer right away, just studied Isabella with the kind of calculating look that had unnerved many before her. Then, finally, she smiled. That's what I'm still trying to figure out, she said, snatching a glass of champagne from a passing tray. But don't worry, Isabella. I always find out. She took a slow sip and melted back into the crowd like fog disappearing into darkness. Isabella stood still, heart pounding under her calm exterior. She took a breath, then another. Olivia was starting to dig, and that meant trouble. Later in the car, the silence between her and William was heavy. The city lights flashed past the windows, reflected in his tense face. She could feel his restlessness without even looking. "You want to ask me something?" she said quietly. "I do," he replied, eyes locked on the road. "I just don't know if you'll answer." She gave a faint smile. "Depends on the question." He made a sharp turn and then asked, with no hesitation, "Who are you, Isabella?" She crossed her legs, seemingly relaxed. "The woman you chose to make a lasting impression on your ex-fiancé." His jaw clenched. "Number, you know too much. You act like someone who's lived this life before." She didn't answer. He pulled into the hotel driveway and turned off the engine. For the first time since the party, he faced her directly. "I had you investigated." There was no reaction, no shock, no indignation. She only looked at him serene. "And what did you find?" He stared, searching for something in her eyes. "Nothing. You don't exist. No records, no history. It's like you erased yourself." A faint smile curved her lips. "Maybe some things are better erased." William exhaled hard, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "I don't like mysteries." She met his gaze calmly. "Then maybe I'm not the right person for you." Without another word, she opened the door and stepped out, walking into the hotel with the same unshakable grace she carried all evening, never once looking back. William stayed behind in the car, gripping the steering wheel, his mind spinning. She was hiding something, and he couldn't let it go. Upstairs, Isabella locked the door behind her and leaned against it, chest rising and falling faster than she liked. Olivia was watching. William was digging. She walked to the mirror, staring at her reflection. The dress, the makeup, the elegance. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. Or maybe she was finally becoming the person she was meant to be. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small disposable phone. With quick fingers, she typed out a single message. He started investigating. A reply came within seconds. "Then it's time to decide your next move." Isabella read it twice, then deleted it, her thumb lingering on the screen before she slipped the phone back into hiding. She couldn't keep her secret buried much longer, and she knew William. He wasn't the type to let go of questions. He demanded control, clear answers, certainty. But she was a riddle wrapped in silk. The next morning, William sat in his office nursing his coffee, but his mind was still caught in the tangled web of the night before. Isabella haunted his thoughts. Her knowledge, her elegance, her ability to glide through high society like she'd been doing it all her life. And yet, she didn't exist. Not in any system, not on any record. It was like she'd vanished before she ever arrived. He picked up his phone and hesitated for only a beat before dialing a number he hadn't called in a long time. A gruff voice answered. "Lancaster? Been a while?" "I need you to look into someone," William said without hesitation. There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Back to digging up ghosts, are we? Who's the target?" William stared out the window for a long second before replying, his voice low. "No last name?" William muttered, narrowing his eyes. "That makes things more interesting." He leaned back in his chair, the tension in his jaw tightening. "I want to know everything. Where she came from, who she really is, and what exactly she's hiding." He gave himself 48 hours. If Isabella was playing some kind of game with him, he'd make sure to see her cards before the clock ran out. Hours later, after leaving the office with a mind swirling in questions, William made a decision. He was done waiting. He knew she was still staying at the hotel he'd arranged for her. Without hesitation, he headed straight there. As soon as he reached her floor, he strode to her room and knocked. No warning, no courtesy. Let's play a little game with those who only scroll to the comments. Type chocolate down below. Only the ones who made it this far will know what it means. Now, back to the story. A few seconds passed before the door creaked open. Isabella stood there, her expression calm, her presence still regal. Gone was the glamorous makeup from the night before. Now she wore a simple outfit, her face bare but composed, like she had nothing to hide. Still, her posture was firm, almost defiant. "Were you expecting someone?" William asked, folding his arms as he studied her carefully. She didn't flinch. "Not really," she said coolly. "But you don't seem like the type who announces his arrival anyway, do you?" He looked at her for a moment longer before speaking again. "Can we talk?" Without a word, she stepped aside, letting him in. The room was neat and orderly, every item in place. It didn't look like someone who had lived rough or was running from something. William moved to the couch and sat down, eyes scanning everything. "Have you always been this direct?" he asked. A small smirk played on her lips. "You don't like small talk," she replied. "So why should I bother?" He nodded slowly, accepting the truth in her words. "I want to know the truth, Isabella." She raised an eyebrow, her voice low. "The truth about what?" "About you. Who you really are." She leaned in just a bit, her gaze piercing. "Why does that bother you so much?" His fists clenched slightly. "Because you came out of nowhere. You accepted my offer like it was nothing, and you act like you've always belonged in this world. But I've looked. You don't exist. There's no record of you anywhere." Silence fell between them. Finally, Isabella sighed and looked away. "And what if I don't want to tell you?" William let out a bitter laugh, void of humor. "Then I'll find out on my own." She held his gaze for a long moment before nodding. Fine, William. I'll tell you a little. He adjusted in his seat, watching her intently. I grew up in a world very much like yours. Wealth, status, power. There were always elegant parties, calculated smiles, and deals made in the shadows. But that world, it's not kind. Especially when you become a problem for the wrong people. William's eyes narrowed. A problem? My family was powerful. My father controlled businesses worth millions. But one betrayal brought it all down. Overnight, everything was gone. He leaned forward. Who betrayed you? Her expression tightened, and she looked away again. Someone I trusted. William could feel it. She wasn't telling him the full story. Not yet. Then why erase your life? She offered a sad, wistful smile. Because sometimes, disappearing is the only way to survive. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. William knew this was only the first layer and there was so much more beneath. Still, it was a start. So what now? He asked quietly. Isabella crossed her legs, calm as ever. I'm still deciding. William rose from the couch, his expression cold. Keep lying to me if you want, Isabella, but I will uncover the truth. The next day, William's phone rang. He answered it with impatience. She watched him as he left, saying nothing, her face unreadable. I found something, his investigator said. Talk to me, William ordered, already feeling the tension climb. You were right. Isabella, she's not who she says she is. His grip on the phone tightened. Go on. Her real name is Isabella Deo, daughter of Richard Dio. William's blood ran cold. That name, he knew it. The construction tycoon? That's the one. But here's where it gets interesting. Richard Dio went bankrupt a few years ago after a massive scandal involving embezzlement. And? William's voice was low. Guess who else was involved? A pause. Olivia Harrington. Everything froze for William. He stared blankly, barely hearing the words anymore. So Isabella didn't show up by chance. Seems like she didn't, the investigator confirmed. William hung up and stood at his office window, eyes lost in the skyline. The puzzle pieces were shifting, and now Isabella wasn't just a mystery. She was connected to Olivia, and that changed everything. That evening, back in his office, William tried to work, but Isabella kept slipping into his mind. Her face, her eyes, that mix of fire and pain she carried. Before he knew it, he had grabbed his car keys and was driving to the hotel again. He needed answers, this time from her lips, not reports. When the door opened, she stood there in the soft light, her hair a little messy, her face tired. Her expression held surprise. William, she breathed. We need to talk, Isabella said with a deep sigh as she opened the door wider, letting William inside. I didn't know you made late-night visits, she added quietly. William crossed his arms, eyes locked on her. Neither did I. His voice was firm. Can you stop testing me for a minute and just tell me the truth? Why did you accept my proposal without any hesitation? Isabella looked away for a moment, her voice barely above a whisper when she finally spoke. Because Olivia Harrington destroyed my family. Those words hit William like a punch to the gut. He already suspected it, but hearing it confirmed made his stomach twist. Olivia was responsible for my father's downfall, for the destruction of my entire life, Isabella said, her eyes fixed on the window. William watched her closely. Tell me everything. She moved to the window and hugged herself tightly, her voice trembling slightly. My father, Richard Deo, owned one of the biggest construction companies in the country. He was a respected man, honest and honorable, until he trusted the Harringtons. Isabella's eyes darkened as she continued. Olivia came in as a strategic partner, someone my father believed in. But she was playing him, manipulating everything, creating fake deals, stealing money, and dragging his name through illegal transactions, all behind his back. When everything exploded, my father was accused of corruption. He lost everything. Our home, our dignity. Her voice cracked. He died before he could clear his name. William felt a sharp pang in his chest, the pain in her voice hitting him deeply. My God. She swallowed hard and went on. After that, everything fell apart. My mother got sick soon after, and she couldn't hold on. I tried to fight to prove my father's innocence, but Olivia had already shut every door in my face. Before long, I had nothing. William stood and walked over to her, his voice softer now. You survived on the streets? She nodded. Yeah, that's where I learned never to trust anyone again. He reached out, gently lifting her chin so she looked him in the eyes. You don't have to do this alone. Isabella pulled away sharply. I don't need a savior, William. He took a deep breath, struggling not to push too hard. I know that, but it doesn't mean you have to carry everything by yourself. She let out a quiet laugh, but it held no humor. You think you can protect me? William met her gaze. I think I want to protect you. Her eyes widened in surprise. Why? He sighed deeply. Because I don't know what I'm feeling anymore when I'm around you. The silence between them stretched long. Finally, Isabella turned fully toward him. What does that mean? He ran a hand through his hair, trying to find the words. It means you make me uneasy in a way I can't explain. I've never felt like this before. She studied him for a moment and then asked softly, Does that bother you a lot? William hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, but maybe it's best if we keep our distance. She shook her head quickly. I can't do that. The tension in the room thickened. She looked away, clearly uncomfortable with where the conversation was heading. This doesn't change anything, William. I know. He noticed her fists clench. And what about Olivia? Just saying her ex-fiance's name snapped William back to reality. If what you say is true, he said quietly, I don't know who she really is. Isabella nodded slowly. But I do, and I won't stop until I settle the score. William stayed silent. He knew trying to make her back down was pointless. Then I'll be by your side, he promised. A small, bittersweet smile appeared on her lips, even though she knew this could end badly. William took a step closer, closing the space between them. The night carried an unspoken promise. Later that same night, William was startled awake by his phone ringing. William, we have a problem. The investigator's voice came urgent over the line. What now? William demanded. Olivia knows Isabella is around, and she's not happy. His heart pounded. What's she going to do? We don't know yet, but someone is digging into Isabella's past. William clenched his jaw. Keep me updated. After hanging up, a heavy weight settled on his chest. Olivia wouldn't let Isabella go easily. He had to act before things got worse. The next morning, William found Isabella sitting on the hotel balcony, knees pulled to her chest, staring out at the horizon. He approached slowly and crouched beside her. You know she found out, right? Isabella sighed. Yeah, she's not going to stop. Neither will I, she said quietly. William watched her. The way her hair was messy, how tired her eyes looked. Something inside him tightened painfully. Isabella blinked, fighting back tears. One slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Without hesitation, William pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her close to his chest. It's going to be okay, he murmured. She didn't resist. She just closed her eyes and rested her face against him. Neither of them said a word. There was no need. In that quiet moment, without speaking it aloud, they both understood. They were in this together. Olivia had no idea what was coming. Since his conversation with Isabella the night before, William's mind refused to rest. Knowing Olivia was behind the destruction of Isabella's family changed everything. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was personal. He wanted revenge, not just for Isabella, but for himself. After all, he had almost married a woman who could destroy lives without a second thought. Now he needed to find out just how far Olivia would go to protect her secrets. That morning, as he reviewed reports in his office, William's phone rang. It was his private investigator. William, we have a problem, the voice said urgently. What is it? Olivia is up to something. My contacts say she's gathering information on Isabella. It looks like she's planning to expose something big. William gritted his teeth. What exactly did she find? I don't know yet, but she's already reached out to lawyers and journalists. If she's going this far, it means she has something huge. He slammed his pen down and ran a hand through his hair. Find out what it is before she makes her move. I'm on it, but you should warn Isabella. Taking a deep breath, William replied, I'm on my way to see her now. When he arrived at the hotel where Isabella was staying, he knocked sharply. The door opened quickly, Isabella looking surprised to see him so tense. What is it? She asked. William walked in without waiting for an invitation and shut the door behind him. Olivia is making a move against you. Isabella's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? She's gathering information and planning something big. My investigator thinks she might try to expose you publicly. Isabella didn't seem shocked. She sighed and crossed her arms. I knew this would happen. William raised an eyebrow. And you're calm about it? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. After everything I've been through, William, do you really think a scandal scares me? He watched her closely, admiring her strength, but knowing how dangerous the situation was. I can protect you. She lifted an eyebrow. I told you, I don't need a savior. This isn't about saving you, he said firmly. It's about stopping Olivia. Isabella stepped closer, staring deep into his eyes. And what exactly are you going to do? William gently cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her skin softly. Whatever it takes. For a moment, she just stood there, looking at him. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of something William wanted to understand, but that she quickly hid. I don't want you to get hurt because of me, she said quietly. He gave a faint smile. Too late for that. Before she could respond, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and her face tightened. What is it? William asked. She showed him the screen. An anonymous message. Be careful who you trust. The past always comes back to haunt you. William took the phone and studied the message. It was Olivia. Isabella deleted the message. She's trying to intimidate me. William shook his head. That means we're close to something. She nodded slowly. Then we need to act before she does. The next morning, the scandal broke. Every major newspaper splashed headlines about Isabella Deo. From luxury to the streets, the heiress who lost everything. Former fiancé of William Lancaster involved in corruption scandals. The media was ruthless, digging into every detail of the Deo family's downfall, painting Isabella as a liar and a cheat. At the office, William read every article with fury burning inside him. When Isabella walked in, he stood immediately. Did you see it? He asked. She nodded and tossed a magazine onto the table. Olivia's trying to destroy me again. He clenched his fists. That's not going to happen. She gave a soft laugh. You always have that ridiculous confidence. He gently lifted her chin, making her meet his gaze. Because I never lose. Her eyes flickered with hope, but determination quickly took over. Then let's make sure she loses this time, William said firmly. He nodded. It's time to bring Olivia Harrington down. They stared at each other for a long moment, knowing neither could predict how this would end. The scandal dominated headlines for days. Olivia played dirty, twisting Isabella's past to make her look like an opportunist, desperate to re-enter high society. But Isabella stood her ground. She had waited years for this moment. She wouldn't fall now. William knew Olivia wasn't done. She was saving her final, cruelest blow for last, and they had to be ready. That evening, Isabella received an unexpected invitation. A private dinner at the Harrington Club. Select members only. The note requested her presence. She gripped the invitation tightly. William, sitting on the couch in her room, read the note and scoffed. This is obviously a trap. I know, Isabella said defiantly. William stood. Then you're not going. She looked at him, eyes fierce. Of course I'm going. He pressed his lips together. Isabella, this is my moment. William took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. Then let's make sure Olivia is the only one who loses tonight. The Harrington mansion glowed under the night sky, buzzing with select guests gathered for the event. Isabella walked in alone, wearing a sleek black dress that radiated power and mystery. William was already there, blending into the crowd but watching every detail with sharp eyes. Then Olivia appeared, her smile sharp and venomous. Isabella, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Glad you accepted my invitation. Isabella took a glass of champagne from a waiter without missing a beat. You didn't give me much choice. Olivia tilted her head, eyes gleaming. I hope you've enjoyed all the attention lately. The media loves your story. I suppose you're used to being the center of attention now. Something you've always wanted, haven't you? For a moment, anger flashed in Olivia's eyes, but she quickly masked it with a smug smile. Isabella, dear, you've lost again. No matter what you try, you'll never be someone. Isabella's lips curled into a confident smile. You're wrong. Before Olivia could respond, William appeared at Isabella's side, his presence commanding. Olivia stiffened. Dear Olivia, William said, handing her an envelope. Looks like you didn't read the papers today. Olivia tore open the envelope and paled as she read. It was a complete dossier. Documents, recordings, signatures, proof beyond doubt of her role in the scheme that destroyed the Deo family. This is fake, Olivia whispered, trembling. No, it's not, Isabella said, her voice triumphant. And tomorrow morning, this will be on every front page. Olivia lost her composure completely. You can't do this to me. William smiled coldly. Just like you did to Isabella. Olivia glanced around, suddenly aware that all eyes were on her. The scandal had begun. Her once untouchable reputation was crumbling. This can't be happening, she murmured in disbelief. Isabella leaned in close and whispered in her ear, Now you know what it feels like to lose everything. Olivia's eyes darted around the ballroom, taking in the stunned faces of everyone witnessing her fall. Her empire of power was collapsing before her very eyes. Before she could react further, the ballroom doors swung open. 2 police officers entered, followed by a stern-looking prosecutor. Miss Olivia Harrington, one officer announced, voice echoing through the room. You are under arrest for financial fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation. The entire ballroom fell into shocked silence. Olivia let out a nervous laugh. This is ridiculous. I am Olivia Harrington. Now you're also a criminal, Isabella replied coldly. The officer stepped forward and handcuffed Olivia. William, Olivia screamed, desperate. Say something. He looked at her with complete indifference. Your only mistake was thinking you'd never get caught. As she was led away, Olivia shot one last burning look at Isabella. This isn't over. It is, Isabella said quietly. And just like that, in front of the elite who once admired her, Olivia Harrington was taken away in handcuffs. Isabella let out a long breath. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. The next day, Olivia's arrest dominated the news. Her financial empire collapsed within hours as investors and allies abandoned her. Later that evening, Isabella and William stood in his penthouse, gazing out over the city lights. Isabella held a glass of wine but didn't drink, lost in thought. You did it, William said softly. We did it, she corrected him, a small smile on her lips. And now, she hesitated. I can start over. William felt a strange tightness in his chest. I want to help you. She looked at him skeptically. He walked over and handed her an envelope. This is a proposal for a new business. A company in your name. She blinked, surprised. What? I want to start something for you. A business that's yours with your name and your independence. She set her wine glass down and crossed her arms. William, I don't need your charity, she said firmly. He chuckled and shook his head. This isn't charity. It's a partnership. You have talent and vision. I want you to have something that truly belongs to you. She hesitated, unsure. He gently took her hands in his. Isabella, you've spent years fighting alone. It's time to start building something real. For a long moment, she stayed silent. Then, finally, she sighed. All right, but on one condition. What condition? He asked. She stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. I do this my way. William smiled warmly. You always do. The air between them shifted. Something warm and intense hung in the space. She looked away, but he gently cupped her face. Isabella, he whispered. She didn't pull back when he leaned in and kissed her. This time there were no walls between them. The tension, the silent feelings, they all exploded in that moment. William held her tightly, almost afraid she might slip away. When the kiss ended, Isabella pulled back, met his gaze, and softly said, Good night, William. Then she turned and walked away. William stayed still, but deep down, he knew she felt it too. Days later, Deo Consulting was born, a new company focused on strategic investment and analysis. Isabella threw herself into the work, building her team and reconnecting with old contacts. Slowly, she started reclaiming her place in the business world. William stayed by her side the whole time, never pushing, but always there. Then one night, he realized he had to say what was on his mind. I'm in love with you, he said, clear and without hesitation. She blinked, surprised. William, I know it's soon, but I can't pretend anymore. Her heart pounded as she looked away. I'm not ready for a relationship. I just got my life back, and I need to focus on that. William nodded, though it hurt more than he wanted to admit. All right, she gave him a soft smile. You always understand, but I'm not a man who gives up easily. In the weeks that followed, William made sure she knew he wasn't giving up. Every morning he left a fresh cup of coffee on her desk. To keep you going, he'd say with a smile. Then came the dinners. Is this a date? She asked one evening. Just dinner between business partners, he replied casually, and the little surprises continued. One night, after a long day, Isabella returned to her office to find a bouquet of white lilies on her desk. A note read, I know you like coffee more than flowers, but I hope you enjoy these anyway. She chuckled, feeling something warm stir inside her. But William wasn't just trying to win her heart, he was her support. When an investor tried to deceive her, William was the first to warn her. When the media tried to twist her story, he used his influence to make sure the truth came out. And when Isabella had a tough day, he showed up with a bottle of wine and a worried look. Want to talk about it? He asked gently. She hesitated, but for the first time, allowed herself to open up. Months passed, and Deo Consulting grew stronger every day. Isabella finally felt like she had control over her life. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore. William was always there, always present. She tried to push down the feelings that grew every time he smiled at her. One evening, Isabella attended a big business event with some of the biggest names in the market. She moved gracefully through the room, greeting investors and CEOs with the confidence of someone who had faced the worst and come out stronger. Her navy blue dress was elegant and simple, yet it drew attention. She focused on making strong connections. But it didn't take long before she noticed someone watching her. Liam Bisset, a famous French investor, approached with a charming smile. He was a charismatic man with dark hair and intense eyes. Miss Deo, I finally have the pleasure of meeting you in person, he said smoothly. Isabella returned his polite smile. Mr. Bisset, the pleasure is mine. He reached out his hand, but instead of a simple handshake, he leaned in and kissed the back of her hand. A traditional yet captivating gesture. I'd say the pleasure is all mine, he added, his gaze locked on hers. Isabella was used to such advances but stayed composed. I assume you're here for business? She smiled softly and said, Business can wait for a moment, don't you think? Liam tilted his head, a playful glint in his eyes, and extended his hand. May I have this dance? She hesitated for a moment but then accepted. Dancing meant nothing to her, just a moment to breathe. Liam guided her onto the dance floor, his hand firm yet respectful on her waist. They moved in perfect rhythm, and Isabella realized he was an excellent dancer. You dance well, Miss Deo, he said smoothly. I've learned that a strong presence is important in business, she replied confidently. Leaning in a little closer, he smiled. And outside of business, aren't there moments when you just let yourself enjoy life? Isabella let out a soft laugh. Are you always this persistent? Only when I find something that genuinely interests me. The music ended, but Liam didn't immediately let go of her hand. Instead, he led her back to the bar, grabbed 2 glasses of champagne, and handed one to Isabella. So tell me, he said, raising his glass. Does a powerful woman like you ever make time for fun? Before Isabella could answer, she felt a sharp gaze on her. Turning, she saw William Lancaster standing across the room. His face was serious, his eyes dark with something she instantly recognized, jealousy. William crossed the room with purposeful strides, ignoring the greetings from others. When he reached Isabella and Liam, he stopped beside her, his irritation barely hidden. Isabella, may I speak with you for a moment? His voice was firm but tense. Liam raised an eyebrow and smiled politely. Mr. Lancaster, correct? I've heard a lot about you. And about you, he said, nodding toward William. William's reply was cold. The temperature around them seemed to drop several degrees. William, we're in the middle of a conversation, Isabella said, trying to stay calm. Yes, I noticed, William replied, glancing sharply at Liam. As much as I'd love to watch this unfold, I have more important matters to discuss with Isabella. Liam kept his polite smile but leaned in and murmured to Isabella with amusement. It seems your friend doesn't like sharing attention. Before she could answer, William took a step forward, clearly not appreciating the remark. "You've had your dance. Now, if you don't mind," Isabella huffed, gripping William's arm firmly. "Excuse me, Mr. Bisset, I'll be back in a moment." She pulled William toward a quiet hallway away from the noise and crowd, her steps quick and determined. Once they were alone, she spun around, furious. "What was that, William?" He ran a hand through his hair, trying to calm himself. "I couldn't stand seeing that guy hitting on you." "That gives you the right to act like a complete idiot?" She shot back. "Didn't you notice the way he was looking at you? He wasn't interested in business. If he was, that's my business, not yours," William said quietly, frustration shining in his eyes. Isabella took a deep breath, trying to control her anger. "I'm not yours. You have no right to be jealous." She turned to leave, but William followed her out to the parking lot. "Isabella, wait," he called. She spun around sharply. "What more do you want?" "I want you to listen to me." "I've heard enough," she said, her voice strong. "You need to understand that you can't control me." The tension between them was electric. William stared at her fiercely, and Isabella felt her body pulse with adrenaline. Then, suddenly, without warning, he pulled her close and kissed her. It was a desperate kiss, full of anger and buried desire. For a moment, Isabella froze, but then she couldn't resist. She kissed him back, but then reality hit hard, and she pushed him away. "You can't do that, William," she said, breathless. He was breathing heavily, his eyes dark with desire. "I know you felt it," he whispered, "but that doesn't justify anything." She shook her head, turned, and hurried to her car. Before he could say another word, she sped out of the parking lot, leaving William behind. The next day, Isabella sat in her office, but her mind kept drifting back to the kiss. She tried to focus on her reports, but the memory lingered, distracting her. Suddenly, the door opened and William stepped in. "You can't just show up unannounced," she said without looking up. "I came to apologize," he said. She finally looked at him. "For the jealousy or the kiss you stole?" He sighed. "Both." "Good. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." William didn't press further and quietly walked away. She turned back to her papers. "Let's play a little game. If you're only reading the comments, type Coca-Cola below. Only those who made it this far will get it." Now, back to the story. That night, Isabella left the office late. As she approached her car, she noticed something was wrong. The window was scratched with a word crudely etched into the glass. "Beware." Her blood ran cold. Someone was trying to scare her. Her first instinct was to call William, but she hesitated. She didn't want to give him another reason to act like her protector. Before she could decide, a message popped up on her phone. "Alone. You won't get anywhere. Nowhere to quit." This time, she didn't hesitate. She picked up the phone and dialed William. He answered on the second ring. "What happened?" he asked. "Someone scratched my car and I just got a threat," she said, voice shaking slightly. There was a pause, then his voice came firm. "I'm on my way." 15 minutes later, William pulled up beside her car. He studied the scratched window, his face set and serious. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she replied, crossing her arms. "You know you can't ignore this, right?" "I know." William pulled out his phone and called one of his private security contacts. "I need footage from the cameras around here. Find out who did this, now." Isabella watched as he took control, handling the situation like someone used to threats. As much as she hated needing help, she felt a strange relief that he was there. When William hung up, he looked at her and said, "Until we find out who's behind this, I want you to have extra security. No exceptions." William never gave up. The following days were tense. William uncovered that the attacks against Isabella's company were orchestrated by one of Olivia's former associates, trying to block Isabella's rise. When Isabella found out, she didn't hesitate. She scheduled a meeting with the man and, with William by her side, made it clear she wouldn't be intimidated. "Did you really think you could scare me?" she asked calmly. "Let me be clear, I've lost everything before. Now there's nothing that will make me back down." The man swallowed hard, knowing he'd lost before the conversation ended. After that confrontation, the attack stopped. Isabella had proven she was no easy opponent, but her victory came with an unexpected realization. Through it all, William had been by her side, not to protect her from something she couldn't handle, but to support her. And that made her wonder why she had been trying so hard to keep her distance. One evening, Isabella was deep in thought in her office when William walked in. "It's been 3 months since you opened the company," he said, tossing a small box onto her desk. She picked it up and opened it. Inside was a silver keychain with the letter I engraved on it. A simple, meaningful gift to celebrate everything she had built so far. He said softly. She smiled, feeling a warm glow spread through her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. He watched her for a moment, then asked quietly, "Will you ever stop running from me?" She held her breath. He continued, "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just want to know if there's a chance." Her heart pounded fiercely. She knew the answer, but wasn't ready to say it yet. He noticed her hesitation and gently said, "It's okay." Taking a small step back, he added, "Like I said, I'm patient." After he left the room, Isabella let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She was close to giving in, but when she did, it would be for good. That thought scared her more than any threat she'd faced before. The next day started like any other. Isabella arrived early at the office and dove into reports and meetings. Since the attacks on her company had stopped, she could finally focus on growing her business. But something felt off all morning. William hadn't shown up. That was unusual. He always found a way to drop by, even if just for a few minutes with a work excuse, or just to tease her. But that morning, no call, no message, no sign of him. At first, she tried to ignore it, but as hours passed, unease settled deeper inside her. By 8 p.m., she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her coat and left the office, driving straight to William's penthouse. When she arrived, she rang the doorbell several times. No answer. Her heart raced. Taking out the spare key William had given her for emergencies, she unlocked the door. The apartment was dim, silent except for the low hum of the television. That's when she saw him. William was lying on the couch, covered with a thin blanket. His face was pale and his breathing was heavy. "William?" Isabella ran to him, placing her hand on his forehead. He was burning up. He opened his eyes slowly, surprised to see her. "Isabella, oh my God, you have a fever." She cupped his face, worry clear in her eyes. "It's just the flu," he murmured hoarsely. "I'm taking you to the hospital," Isabella said, already grabbing her phone. But William grabbed her wrist, stopping her. "Number, I just need to rest." "William, you're burning up," she insisted. He tried to smile. "If I go to the hospital, they'll take my blood. I hate needles." Isabella sighed in frustration. "You're impossible." William closed his eyes, exhausted. She got up and went to the kitchen to prepare hot tea and grab a damp cloth. Returning, she knelt by the sofa and gently placed the cloth on his forehead. "This will help bring down your fever." He opened his eyes and looked at her softly. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did." The silence between them was heavy with meaning. Isabella didn't want to admit it, but seeing him like this made her chest tighten. She spent the entire night caring for him, making tea, changing the cold cloth on his forehead, never leaving his side. At some point, exhaustion took over and she fell asleep right there on the floor, resting her head near his chest. The next morning, Isabella woke to the gentle touch of William's fingers running through her hair. "Did you stay here all night?" he asked, his voice stronger now. She blinked a few times before lifting her head. "You were in bad shape. Someone had to take care of you." He smiled, running a hand over his face. "I feel much better now. I think I had the best nurse in the world." She chuckled softly and stood up. "I'll make breakfast." In the kitchen, Isabella carefully prepared everything. Fresh bread, neatly sliced fruit, orange juice, and strong coffee. When she returned with the tray, she found William sitting on the couch, watching her with a different expression. "What is it?" she asked. He took a deep breath before speaking. "I love you, Isabella." She froze for a moment. "William, I know you feel the same. I saw it last night, the way you worried about me." She bit her lip, her heart pounding. This time there was no reason to deny it. "I love you too, William." His eyes lit up with pure happiness. "Finally," he murmured, pulling her into a tight embrace. She laughed softly against his chest, feeling ridiculously happy. "You're so persistent." "And it was worth it," he whispered. They pulled apart and Isabella began serving breakfast. William watched her every move as if memorizing every detail. Suddenly he spoke. "I want you to take the day off." She raised an eyebrow. "What?" "I want to take you somewhere special." She hesitated, but after the night before, the thought of being away from him didn't scare her. "All right, where are we going?" "It's a surprise." William drove her to a secluded cabin by a private beach. The moment they stepped out of the car, Isabella was speechless. "William, this is beautiful." He smiled warmly. "I knew you'd love it." They spent the afternoon walking along the shore, feeling the cool ocean breeze and talking about everything and nothing. Then William sat on a rock and looked at her thoughtfully. "What is it?" she asked, sitting beside him. He took a deep breath. "Before I met you, I was arrogant, ambitious. I only cared about power and myself." Isabella stayed quiet, listening closely. "But then you came along and started challenging me. At first it annoyed me, but then I became intrigued. You were the first person who wasn't afraid to stand up to me. That made me realize I was surrounded by people who only ever said yes. You made me see the world differently." Her heart tightened. "I never wanted to change you, William. But you did. You made me a better man, more human, more humble." Isabella smiled softly. "And I fell in love with this version of you." He took her hand, eyes locked on hers. "I need to ask you something." She frowned, curious. William stood and pulled a small box from his pocket. Isabella's eyes widened when he opened it, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. "Isabella Deo, I want to do this the right way. I want to love you the way you deserve, with respect, patience, and all my heart. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. She didn't hesitate. "Yes." William smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a passionate kiss. In that moment, Isabella knew there were no more barriers between them. This was only the beginning of something even greater. The sun was setting over the beach as they returned to the cabin. The air was warm, carrying the ocean's scent mixed with a gentle breeze that made her hair dance. William held her hand firmly as if afraid she might disappear, but there were no doubts left. They belonged to each other. "I still can't believe we're engaged." Isabella said, gazing at the sparkling ring on her finger. William smiled, pulling her closer. I knew this would happen. You just took your time accepting it. She rolled her eyes, laughing. You never give up, do you? Never. Not when it comes to you. Her heart warmed at his words. She had never imagined finding a love this deep, this real. Later that night, William prepared a special dinner on the cabin's terrace. Candles flickered softly on the table, and the waves crashing against the shore created the perfect soundtrack. You're cooking? Isabella teased, eyeing the beautifully plated dish. I wanted to impress my fiancé, William replied, pouring wine for them both. She raised her glass. To us, to our future. He clinked his glass with hers. To the love of my life. They toasted, sharing laughter and loving glances over the meal. When dinner was finished, William took Isabella's hand and pulled her close for a dance under the stars. Do you remember the first time we danced? He asked, guiding her gently. At that business event? I remember. You were insanely jealous. She chuckled. I was. But now I know I never had to be. You were always meant to be mine. Isabella smiled and rested her head on his chest as they danced beneath the starry sky. Two hearts finally home. She finally realized she would never have to run away from her feelings again. Months later, the big day arrived. Isabella never imagined she'd dream about a wedding, but there she was, dressed in white, ready to say I do to the man who had completely changed her life. The ceremony took place in a stunning garden by the sea. White flowers decorated the altar, and elegant chairs were lined up perfectly for their guests. The gentle sound of waves crashing in the background made the moment feel almost magical. William stood waiting at the altar, looking sharp in a sleek black suit. When Isabella appeared at the end of the aisle, his heart skipped a beat. She looked breathtaking. Her hair fell in soft waves, and her delicate dress made her look like she belonged in a dream. But what caught William's attention most was the sparkle in her eyes, a sparkle filled with hope and love. As she walked towards him, her smile was full of emotion. When they finally reached the altar, William took her hands and whispered, You look beautiful. Isabella smiled back, tears threatening to spill. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking about love, partnership, and the promise of building a life together. When it was time for the vows, William took a deep breath. Isabella, from the moment I first saw you, you challenged me. You never bowed down or accepted things blindly, and that's why I fell in love with you. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes. You've made me a better man. You showed me that power and money mean nothing without someone to share life with. I promise to love, respect, and make you happy every single day. Isabella could barely hold back her emotions as she spoke her vows. William, I spent so long fighting alone, thinking I couldn't trust anyone. But you never gave up on me. Today I know I never want to live without you. They exchanged rings, and when the officiant declared them husband and wife, William pulled her into a passionate kiss as everyone applauded. It was official. They were married. Their honeymoon was perfect. They traveled to beautiful places, soaking up every moment together. When they returned, their life as a married couple started even better than they had dreamed. William spoiled Isabella every day, bringing her coffee in bed each morning while she surprised him with romantic dinners. Their love grew stronger with every passing day. But then, something changed. Isabella began feeling strange, tired all the time and often nauseous. One morning, her heart raced as she looked at the pregnancy test in her hands. 2 lines. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face. Overwhelmed with joy, she and William were going to have a baby. The surprise got even bigger at the doctor's office. She was expecting twins. When Isabella got home, William found her sitting on the couch, holding the ultrasound picture. Isabella, what's wrong? He asked. She looked at him, her eyes shining with happiness. William, I'm pregnant. He froze for a moment, then she smiled, placing the ultrasound in his hand. We're having twins. William's eyes widened, then a huge smile spread across his face. Oh my God, he laughed, pulling her into a tight hug. We're having 2 babies. Yes, she whispered through tears. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her deeply. You just gave me the best news of my life. She laughed, overwhelmed with love. I love you so much, William, and I love you more. The next months were an emotional roller coaster. William became even more protective, constantly spoiling Isabella. He talked to the babies before bedtime, gave her foot massages, and insisted she take it easy. Finally, at the baby shower, surrounded by friends and family, they shared their exciting news. They were expecting a boy and a girl. William held Isabella close and whispered, We built an empire together. Now we'll build a family. She smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness. This was going to be the best family ever. In that moment, Isabella knew she had everything she ever dreamed of. A home filled with love, true happiness, and now a growing family. She would never be alone again.